So let's go through that. I think that's the other piece that we spoke about in terms of not just the relevance of communication, but if you're a manager, what are the do's and don'ts, especially attracting or getting a Gen Z into your system?
I want to share a story with you here. A few years, many years back, in fact, when I used to work, I remember one of the colleagues was not working, and somebody suggested this thing. Why don't you tell him to buy a house? Yeah, because the objective was when you buy a house, your EMIs go up and you start to run behind, and then we don't have to run behind you. That is how the millennials worked. We had so much, all of us had so much on our plates and so much that we did that the way we did things were very different. But look at the Generation Z today.
Yeah.
Most of them, I'm not categorizing them, but most of them are not buying cars. The
Yeah.
first thing I did with my first salary was buy a car, right?
Right.
And all the money went in the down payment, and then the load of the EMIs. You progress a little bit more in 3-4 years, you buy your first house, and for the rest of 20 years, you're paying off EMIs. And when you have burdens like that, you are a very different person with those kind of stakes at work. But today the context is changing. Generation Z is not buying cars. They have Ola and Ubers, which we didn't have. They're not buying homes. We all know marriage rate for Generation Z in the countries are going low, which means
Yeah.
they don't come off as much as responsibilities. And also on a lighter note, I was telling this to my son, who is a teen, saying, "You are the alpha generation." And I
Yeah.
think somewhere they are
Yeah.
the richest generation ever, with some parents who are, the ones who slogged off, the millennials and the Generation X who slogging it off, who is
Yes.
going to make the alpha millennials the richest of them, which essentially means that where they are coming from and what they have in store for them is very different from ours. So
Yeah.
as a manager, understanding this, the way, and we have this constant comparison to say, I did this when I was your age. So
Yeah.
that's probably not going to work. You had to because you had no choice
Right.
for the choices you made.
Yeah.
Um, and probably they are not making the same choices. So for them, the stakes are possibly, I think, again, very different. I think when we were working as Generation X, the way our managers behaved with us from a micromanaging point of view, being at top of it, and things were different. But now organizations are going so much leaner and flatter, which was not the case earlier. This whole concept of, helping a person understand the frame of work, because we all know how Generation Z like their autonomy. They like their different ways of doing things. So I think that, and helping them understand the frame of work that they need to do. One of my bosses used to say this, we need to delegate, but we need to delegate with authority.
Right.
You just can't delegate. You have to give the person authority,
Right.
but you have, as a senior leader of the organization, being mindful of what authority. So at what point the authority stops. So maybe if you're in a business on sales, until $10,000 you can take the decision and you have a range to play with. I remember my boss used to do this with me, but maybe beyond that you probably need to come to me. So helping them understand, and again, I genuinely believe in the power of why. So helping them understand the reason you are not given
Yeah.
10,000 above approvals is not because you can't handle it, but that's because it has a financial implication. So I think helping them again understand the why becomes so important. This whole pandemic and the way things have changed, we don't need managers today. We need coaches today.
Yeah. Excellent.
So
What a
we
great point.
we
Yeah.
need coaches who can really coach you, because you see, you and I, Nikhil, have different ways the way we will do things. And especially the Generation Z has a very different style of doing it. So can I coach you? Because there is no one right way of doing something. And again, I personally believe, working with, because I teach at colleges, so I work with a lot of students as well.
Sure.
And I'm realizing that their ambitions are very different.
Yeah.
So if you ask them, do you want to be a CEO of the company or versus have your own NGO? Maybe they're more thrilled about having an NGO. So
Right.
I think the way to communicate with your employees is to say, especially in the starting years of your role, try become a generalist.
Yeah.
This whole world's fantasy of trying to become a specialist. It's a good thing to do when you're in a certain stage of your career. But I think when you're expanding and starting out, organizations communication to say, let's get multiple skills. Get to understand all nuances of a job before you choose to get yourself into a specialist role. So I think some of these are something that I think are some ways to managing our Generation Z's.